Welcome to Expressions of Leadership. I'm your host, Michele Kawamoto Perry. In every episode, we explore how people from educators and artists to executives and entrepreneurs lead with authenticity, rise through adversity, and share the wisdom they've gained along the way. Today's guest has led from behind a drum kit, from behind a desk, and from the heart of a global writing community. Christopher Fielden is an award-winning short story author, editor, publisher, and drummer for bands including Airbus and Little Villains. He runs the internationally acclaimed humorous short story competition To Hull and Back and has turned his website into a hub for writers around the world, offering advice, courses, competition, and inspiration. Chris, welcome to Expressions of Leadership. It's such a joy to have you on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, Chris, you've worn many hats. How has that range of roles shaped your style of leadership?
I think it's made me pretty laid back, really, because a lot of the stuff I do is quite creative, and you've got to be fairly relaxed to be creative. So, yeah, I'd say it's made me nice and relaxed. The people who work with me may say something different, of course, but you know.
And in your opinion, what leadership qualities are universal, no matter the field or industry?
I think probably treating people as you would wish to be treated yourself. Um, Mutual respect, and if you're managing people or dealing with people, then working out what their strengths are and allowing them to play on those strengths. Because, you know, if you've got someone in a job and they're working for you, you didn't hire them for something they're rubbish at. You hired them for something, you know, that they're good at. So I try to do that with all the different things, all the different pies that I've got my fingers in.
And what do you think is so important about that when it comes to being a leader?
If you want people to excel, then you need to treat them well and help them achieve the most they can.
And you said that respect is also really important, and I definitely agree with you about that.
Hmm.
I'm curious to know, what is it that you think gets in the way of leaders treating others with respect?
Ego sometimes. I've seen that before. And sometimes just personality clashes. Or if someone really has a different opinion, particularly in business, of the best way forward for a business, for example, um, sometimes that can cause friction and can lead to, it's not always a lack of respect because you've got to be able to argue and put your arguments forward. I suppose the key is listening as much as talking, which some people are very good at and some people aren't.
And has there been a moment where you had to switch leadership styles dramatically because of the role that you were playing? And if so, what did you learn from that?
Yeah, so one of the companies I worked for was a digital marketing firm, and it grew very quickly. And the issue with digital marketing, at least back in the day, was it evolved so fast you couldn't keep up with it. And you were trying to do something good for your clients, and then Google would change the way they looked at the algorithm with a big update, and suddenly what you were doing for them was actually damaging them. So we had to change and adapt very quickly, which is sometimes hard for all staff members, right from the bottom to the top. But the other biggest challenge I found with that was the business grew, and then it got to a stage where it was too big, and we had to do cutbacks. So instead of doing the kind of nurturing growth side of people management, I had to deal with redundancies. And I found that very difficult. But obviously, that's a very different thing to helping people grow within a role, suddenly you're looking at everything in a totally different way. Um, and it's not something I'd want to go through again, but when you're working in business, it is sometimes it's something that you have to do. Um, and I suppose the hardest bit of that was messaging to people who were being considered for redundancy why this was happening, reassuring them that it wasn't really anything to do with them. It was the fact that we were taking a financial hit because of changes within the industry, and therefore we had to downsize on the staff. And yeah, it wasn't very easy. But I learned a lot from it. You can never tell how someone's going to react in a situation like that. Some people really didn't seem to care. They weren't bothered about it at all, and some people got extremely upset. I guess because it puts their whole world in jeopardy if they're on a tight income and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that required a lot of change very, very quickly and put me out of my comfort zone. So I learned a lot from doing it, but it's really not something I particularly like to go through again. And that it brings me back to the treat people as you want to be treated yourself. You've got to be kind to them in that situation and just be honest and explain the situation to the best of your ability to them so they can process it.
What was the biggest lesson for you coming out of that?
I suppose, well, there were a few. Like I said, people didn't always react like you'd expect them to. So you had to stay on your toes because you really didn't know how they were going to react. And the other one was just I found being kind to people in that situation worked better than anything else. If they had concerns about it or got upset, you listen to them, take it on board, take a moment, and then try and calm them down and explain the situation to them in a kind of a rational way that didn't sound overly dramatic, I suppose. So, I did learn a lot from it. And you learn a lot about people. And, I write as well. So, from a very selfish way of looking at it, but from a writer's perspective, it gives you another insight into writing characters realistically in certain situations of high pressure, because you can't tell how people are going to react. So I suppose it helped me in some ways if you look at it like that. But it's not something I'd like to go through again.
It sounds like you also expressed some empathy with the people who were being laid off at the time.
Oh, totally. I mean, some of them were friends. I suppose there's different ways of looking at it, isn't there? With I've heard people talk about job roles in different ways, and I've seen managers who don't treat the people they manage as friends. They have a very clear line that they're colleagues, and then you've got the other ones that are a bit more friendly. And my natural default setting is to be friendly to people, and therefore you develop a friendship with them. And I think, if I was ever managing a firm of that size again, I think I'd probably just do it the same way because that's me. That's just my management style. But I can see why people do it a different way and keep that distance because it enables you to, I don't know, maybe deal with difficult situations more easily. I don't know.
I see that there is often a lack of empathy in the workplace. And it seems to be because people feel like work is work and personal is personal. And we have to separate the two. But the fact of the matter is, and I've said this many times, is we're all human beings, we're not human doings. And so we can't just separate that out and just say, well, we're going to treat you like an automaton or just somebody who performs tasks, because the fact of the matter is they are a whole person. They do have things that are happening in their personal life that are going to impact them at work. They do have feelings. They do have beliefs and thoughts and values that are going to impact how they are at work.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And if you treat people like robots or not as humans, you get a high churn rate. And that's awful for companies, especially when you spent time training someone, in the digital marketing realm, you're losing someone with skills every time someone walks out the door, and then you've got to retrain someone else. And that was a huge problem. I did everything I could to keep people because you build a team and it makes them very happy. They're happy working together, positive working atmosphere. They get more creative and you end up with better results for clients on the whole. Um, so yeah, staff retention and happiness is a really big part of what makes, people-led businesses, service businesses, where the people are really key to it. It's what makes them successful.
Switching gears now, what's the biggest leadership challenge that you faced juggling so many different hats, and how did you overcome it?
Well, I suppose all the different things I do, they're very different. So you've got the digital marketing, which is an office environment or um, more business-like. You've got a band, which is a totally different dynamic, because you've got three or four people who are being creative together and just having fun. Okay, you might have an end goal of trying to sell your music, but it's more you're doing it for yourself, not for other people. So you haven't got clients, if you like. You've got an audience, and it's a different way of looking at things. And then writing's more similar to music, I suppose. But when you put the publishing hat on, then you're dealing with all the different writers, and you're the one that's doing the editing and putting it all together. So really, they're totally different beasts, and you have to treat them very differently. I did one project with the writing where I put a book together with 1,000 people in it. So there were 1,000 contributing authors, and we were trying to get a world record, and Guinness wouldn't let me do it. And it's because what did they say? They said creativity is very hard to judge and put in a box, basically, on the quality side of things because it's so subjective. So they were going to ditch all these world records to do with books because they couldn't verify the quality of it, which I found slightly annoying. It's 1,000 people in a book. They already had it had to be published by a recognized publisher, had to go through all the traditional routes. You had to sell over 1,000 copies of it and all that kind of stuff. So it's not like they didn't have rules in place to discern the quality of the project. But anyway, they wouldn't let us do it, which was annoying. So I had to call it an unofficial world record, but it's still a book with 1,000 people in it. And that was very challenging to manage because most of the people I hadn't met, they just emailed me. They'd submit a very short story. They were pieces of flash fiction that were under 100 words. And then managing that amount of people and their expectations and communicating when the book's going to come out, how the book's going to come out, where are they going to get it? If they're based all over the world, some of them aren't going to be able to get it because Amazon don't deliver in Iran, for example. It's like, how does it work? So that was really challenging. It was very enjoyable. But that's completely different to dealing with four people in a band creating an album and putting music together. So it's not comparable, I suppose. But the core to it is just being nice to people, I think. And if they've got a question, you answer it. You take the time to answer it.
And did you develop any specific habits or tools to manage all of this?
Yeah, so I template emails. They were I use them all the time now with all the projects I do. Because quite often you're saying the same thing to people. And then you can still personalize it, but it just saves you time when you're replying to thousands of different people. And email lists, so for example, with the book, I put an email list in MailChimp with all the authors on it, and then when I needed to communicate with them, I could just bang an email out and it would go to all of them. Um, so so that was useful. And the feedback I got from people was we like working on this project. It's all done for charity, so no one's getting paid. They're just doing it for fun. Um, but they appreciated the communication and the time spent making them feel part of the project. And then when we released the book, we sold a nice lot of them because obviously there's 1,000 people in it, so most of them are going to buy it. But we did very well when we launched the book. And we went on to win an award, and that was done through a public vote. And largely it was because I had 1,000 people in the book and they were all voting for it. But because they were so engaged in the project, it helped the book do better. And now it's an award-winning book. And therefore you sell more of them. It's just by treating people nicely, taking the time to communicate with them. I remember I did a panel once with this bloke who he was an agent. And most agents are really nice, but this guy wasn't. And he said he just doesn't bother replying to people when they email him. And it's like if someone sent you a book, whether you like it or not, surely you should just take the time to acknowledge the fact that you've received it or something. So I do the polar opposite. I reply to everyone, apart from spammers, everyone who emails me about anything. I always reply to them. And that's part of what's grown the audience on the website and with my writing. And it translates with the bands as well. When we sell CDs, I always put a little personal note on a little, little villain's headed bit of paper in with the CD. Just thanks for buying it. Hope you like the CD. And people like that. And then they come back and buy it the next one you do. So I think, personalized communication is really important across the board.
Well, we've just begun to explore Chris Fielden's multifaceted leadership journey from business to music and beyond. Coming up next, we dive deeper into his unique perspective on leadership through drumming and what role players can teach us about leading with impact. We'll be back after this short break. Don't miss a thing. Follow Expressions of Leadership on your favorite podcast app and connect with us on Instagram and YouTube at Expressions of Leadership. Welcome back to Expressions of Leadership. I'm Michele Kawamoto Perry, and I'm here with author, drummer, and literary leader Chris Fielden. Let's dive back in. Now let's talk about leadership in music. Drummers often provide the backbone of a band without always being center stage, if you will. From your experience as a drummer, what leadership lessons can we learn about supporting others and leading from a role player position?
I think it depends on the band you play in. So I play in quite a few bands, Airbus and Little Villains, which I've actually got the branding on for today. Very different. So Little Villains is a three-piece metal band, and Airbus is a rock band, which is a four-piece. With Airbus, there are four very strong personalities. James and Nick do most of the writing in that band just because that's the way it evolved. We all contribute to the sound that is Airbus, and we all contribute on the song level to make the song sound a certain way, but they do the main writing in that band. Whereas Little Villains is all three of us come up with songs. So I play the guitar a bit, and I actually get to do some of the guitar riffs with that band, write them at least. I don't play them. And usually I'll say, "Oh, I've got this idea for a song," but they'll let me show them what it is and then do their thing with it, and we turn it into a song. So the writing is more equal, I suppose, and they're very different. The common theme is, like you say, the drummer's the backbone. Your job is to keep everyone tight. That's the role. And if you look at my favorite drummers, they tend to be the ones that play more simple beats and give the song what it needs. So Ringo, for example, who sometimes gets criticized for not being very good, usually by people that don't know anything about drumming. But what he was very good at was providing the backbone for the band and giving a song exactly what it needed. Where it needed space, he would give it space. When it needed something a little bit more, he would give it a little bit more. Phil Rudd was the same with AC/DC. Charlie Watts was the same with the Rolling Stones. There's that quality of drummer, they hold it all together. And is that a leadership quality? I don't know, really. I suppose you could say it is. Um, you're responsible for the tempo and uh, holding the band together while they play a song, particularly live. The rest of the band will rely on you to hold that part of it together so they can go off and do what they do. The singer doesn't need to worry about it. They can go up and sing. The guitarist doesn't need to worry about it when he's playing his solo. You're holding it together with the rhythm section, the bassist and the rhythm guitarist, or however your band is set up. Um, and I find that really pleasurable. You get to hold the groove together, and that's what it's all about. So I don't know if that really translates into other forms of leadership because it's very specific to being in a band. But it's being the calming influence, I suppose, is the other side to it. Not all drummers are going to be like that, but that's my role. There's a joke in Spinal Tap, isn't there, where because the new Spinal Tap movie's coming out soon. They're doing a rework of it, which I'm very excited about. Paul McCartney and Elton John are in it. I've seen them in the clips. But there's the Derek Smalls, who's the chap who does the voice for Mr. Burns on The Simpsons. He's talking about his role in the band, and he says one of them, Nigel, is fire and David is ice, and I'm the lukewarm water in between. And it's satirical, but I think there's an element of truth to that.
And can you share an example from your band experience where your leadership made a difference in the group dynamic?
Yeah, if people are having a disagreement about how a song should go, I can sometimes make a joke, or why don't we try this just to calm it? Doesn't always work, it's got to be said, but I think that can help uh, to stop situations escalating when they don't need to. Be the lukewarm water in between the fire and ice.
Hmm. And how do you keep yourself motivated and disciplined as a drummer? And how does that discipline translate into your leadership in other areas?
Well, I listen to quite a lot of music. I'm not massively adventurous with the things I listen to. I like AC/DC, I listen to them a lot. I like Iron Maiden, I listen to them a lot. I've been listening to a lot of Black Sabbath recently because obviously with Ozzy passing, it's like, oh, dig out all my Black Sabbath albums and been listening to that a lot. But I suppose when you listen to other players, it can inspire you to try different things yourself, and that's really important. And that translates into all forms of leadership and any work that you do. As a writer, you need to try new things to see what's going to work so that you evolve as a writer. And I think whatever industry you work in, you can apply that, learn from the other people that do what you do, and find what works for you. I suppose it's like research, isn't it, really? Research and how to do something better. Um, and say I learn a new drum technique, you've got a totally different style then for a song. We do that quite a bit with Little Villains and Airbus, to be fair. The songs are quite diverse. You can't just say, oh, it's rock or oh, it's metal. There's a lot of crossover because we've all got so much influence. And I think all the members of the band are like that. We've got influences from all over the place, and that's what helps form the sound. So, listening to music and staying on your toes and learning new bits and bobs and coming up with different ideas is really important. Otherwise, it will start sounding a bit samey.
We've just heard some great insights on leadership from behind the drum kit. After the break, Chris shares how he's building a thriving community for writers around the world. Stay with us. Want to support powerful conversations on leadership and success? Expressions of Leadership is looking for sponsors who believe in the power of great storytelling. Let's team up. Email us at letstalk@expressionsofleadership.com to learn more. Welcome back to Expressions of Leadership. I'm your host, Michele Kawamoto Perry, and I'm here with guest Chris Fielden. We're exploring how creativity and community intersect in leadership. Chris, your website started as a personal author platform, but it's evolved into a vibrant hub that supports writers with competitions and advice and courses. What inspired you to grow this community?
Yeah, so like you said, the website started out as an author platform. That was my original idea with it, and it evolved into to what it is completely by accident. If I'm honest, it wasn't planned. Um, when I first started writing and launched the website, no one knew me as an author, so I found I had the site there, but no, hardly anyone was finding it beyond family and friends who just go and have a look at it and go, oh, yeah, it's Chris doing his thing. And that was it. And my background in digital marketing meant that I understood that if you can add something of value to a community, to your audience, they start thinking of you as a thought leader. And then they'll come to you, and then they may discover that you're a writer or you do music or whatever as part of that. So I had a big spreadsheet with loads of competitions in it that I was planning to submit stories to. And I had a link to the competition. I had the closing date. I had how much money was on offer, what the cost of entry was. And I thought, well, it's a big long list. There were about 100 of them. If I were to publish that online, maybe it would be useful to other writers who are also researching, trying to find competitions to enter. So that was really the first piece of content that I put on the site that broke me out of the friends and family realm and started attracting people from all over the place who were, looking for that. Um, and, the traffic on the site went up by 100 times. It took a few weeks, but it jumped up. So I started developing more content like that, aimed at writers, because writers like to read as well. And I started getting more and more traffic through the site. So I did book competitions, I did short story competitions, poetry competitions, magazines that accept submissions of fiction, non-fiction, all sorts of different stuff, and just expanded it until I was getting quite a lot of traffic through. And then um, I thought, well, all these people are coming along and looking for competition, so why don't I start running one? I've already got that audience. Surely some of them are going to enter what I do. And my preferred genre for writing is humorous fantasy. I like humor, Terry Pratchett, Douglas Adams, people like that. Sue Townsend as well. She did the Adrian Mole books. They're very funny. I'm reading them at the moment. So I thought, well, why not do something a little bit different? It'll be a humorous competition. Um, I went a little bit overboard because I called it To Hull and Back, play on the cliche to hell and back. I've got a motorbike. So I thought, I know, I'll put the winner's head on the cover of the book. I'll strap the book to the handlebars of my bike. I'll make a film of it being ridden to Hull and back. And Hull is in the north of England. It's about 250 miles away from where I live. It's about a 500-mile round trip. And I thought, no one's going to enter this. It's too crazy. And lots of people did the first year. And now it's been going. I launched it in 2013. So it's been going 12 years now. And I've just run the ninth competition. I'm in the throes of judging it. And it's still growing, and it it's so good for brand awareness. Even though, it's a crazy competition, but people like it because there's nothing else like it. And at the time when I launched it, I didn't have a lot of money to put into it. So I thought, well, how can I make it interesting for people? And that's where the crazy idea came from with the motorbike and the book and all that kind of stuff. So that helped grow the audience. And then through these different mediums, these different avenues of marketing, more and more people find me, and I started selling more books. So I did a how-to book alongside all the competition listings and stuff like that, I got other people writing for me, giving advice on writing. And I thought I'd write a how-to book, and that's done very well. I've sold thousands of copies of that, and it still sells now. And it just helps people understand how to write short stories. And when I was starting out, I was looking for examples of you can read all the advice, you can find tons of advice online, but there's very rarely an example that goes with it, not of a full story. So I used full stories as examples, and then I'd take the editors and judges' comments where the story had been published and publish them, even if they were negative, so that people could learn by my experience. Here's the advice, here's what I did, here's the bits that worked, and here's the bits that didn't. And then they can go away and apply it to their writing in a way that makes sense to them. And that's the style of learning I like. Doesn't agree with everyone. I've got my fair share of one-star reviews, but I've got lots of five-star reviews as well, where people value that way of looking at it. So, the website it's developed massively, and now I recently launched a monthly subscription service, and I do weekly emails, um, interviews, much like the one you're doing with me now, but I'll interview publishers or writers or competition administrators so that writers can learn about writing. And we run workshops and all sorts of different stuff, and it's all done with a monthly fee. And that is how I intend to fully monetize the business so that I don't have to do any more day job stuff. So that's a little journey in itself, and I think it may take a year or two, but that's the direction it's going in. And all this is, I launched my website in 2011, and all of that really has happened through learning on the job. It wasn't like I thought, I'll start here and go to a subscription service. It's just that's how it evolved, and it became the most logical way forward. So it's been quite a journey.
And in this journey, you've built quite the community. As you said, you attract hundreds of authors annually from all over the world. How do you lead inclusively and sustainably in a creative space where everyone is bringing their own voice and vision and dreams?
I think it's accepting that you don't know best. Well, I run a number of writing challenges for charities, and one of them I do for young writers, and this can be anything from tiny little children, like 3, 4 year olds, right up to university age. And the whole point of it is it allows creative expression, and the writers can see their work published on a website. They get a certificate saying it's been published, which I do a little signed thing for them. Um, and it just gives them that first step on the ladder. So they've got that experience of working with an editor. They see someone, maybe I'll change a word here or I'll fix the punctuation. They learn about that side of it. And they just learn the joy of seeing their words in print, and it helps people go on to the next step. And what I've found is because I've published, I don't know, it's got to be about 3,000 different writers now. It's a lot. The difference in voice and style, there's no right or wrong way of doing it. You've just got to accept that that is that person's voice. All you're trying to do is, if you edit it, is enhance that voice. You're not trying to tell them it's wrong. It's not wrong, it's their voice. Uh, and you just assist them to get their voice sounding as good as it can. Um, and to be honest, the more I work with it, the less I edit. It sounds silly, but sometimes grammar errors suit the voice. So, for example, I've been running the competition recently, and it closed in June. So I spent all July reading 662 stories, humorous stories, which was a lot of reading because you read 662, then you read your favorite 100 again, then you read your favorite 80 again, then you read your favorite 50 again. It's like 2 million words of reading. It's a lot. Think Lord of the Rings times 8. It's a lot of reading. And then one of the stories I'm editing is written by a chap who lives in India, and he is Indian. And if I edit that too much, you're just going to lose the voice. So I haven't. I've barely edited it. I've made the odd correction with punctuation, but the rest of it I've kind of left because I'd be doing him a disservice by editing it too much. I can't say too much about that because I haven't even announced the shortlist yet. So I've got to be a bit, no names at this stage. It's a lovely story. And I think what I've learned is that sometimes you just got to leave the words alone, fix what needs to be fixed, and don't mess with the rest of it.
And can you share a memorable moment or success story from your work supporting emerging writers?
Yeah, so one of the winners of To Hollenbach, Emma, who she won it in trying to think 2021, I think. And she went on to write a collection of short stories, or she put all the short stories that had been placed or won competitions in a book. And that book was selected as a on the shortlist for the Edgehill Prize. And that in short story writing in the UK, that is the prize. You can't enter it. Your publisher can send them a copy of a book, and that's it. They then decide from all these, I don't know how many they get, it must be a lot. They decide on 10 that are going to be shortlisted, and she went on to achieve that, which I mean, she was a very good writer. I'm not saying I had anything to do with that, but I think when it's nice to see writers that you have helped go on to do better things. And right from little kids, in the 81 words book, the youngest contributing author there's 4 years old, and they were over the moon. And that might make them go and try harder with their creative writing in the future. I've seen that a few times where people don't give up. And every now and then I get one of those emails where they're like, you published this in this. I just wanted to let you know that I've just had my short story selected, or I've just had my book taken on by a publisher. And that happens. And it's just like, that's so rewarding. And you've just given them a little step along the way. I guess it's what being a teacher's all about, isn't it? It must be when you see someone succeed, it's really gratifying.
Well, we're going to take a brief pause. And when we come back, we'll dive more into mentorship and creative collaboration. Don't go anywhere. Leadership isn't just about strategy, it's about people. The Forward Project helps organizations cultivate strong, adaptable leaders who create thriving workplace cultures. If you're ready to invest in your leadership team, visit www.theforwardproject.co to learn how. You're listening to Expressions of Leadership. I'm Michele Kawamoto Perry, and my guest today is Chris Fielden. Let's get back into our conversation. You've mentored writers through your courses and flash fiction challenges. What leadership skills are most important for someone mentoring others creatively?
I think it's pointing out the good things as well as the bad things. So I run a service which is critiques. We critique the openings of books, we critique entire novels sometimes, and stories. And having dealt with a lot of writers in that way now, it's delivering the bad news as part of a sandwich. Am I allowed to say that? Um, you give them the good, something good, because every writer, it doesn't matter what stage they're at, there is going to be something good about what they're doing. Then you point out the things that they're not doing so well, and then you give them something positive at the end that they can, go and work on. So with critiques, I think it's really important to let them know what they're doing well, as well as what they need to look at to improve. One of the things we started doing actually as part of the service is we give a written critique, which is like a report, and then we offer a follow-up call on Zoom so that the writer can discuss the critique or the edit um, with the person who's done the work. And that has led to so much repeat custom because it gives them I don't know, another level of input. And sometimes what's written down on paper comes across in a way that, it can be interpreted in a number of different ways. Whereas when you speak to someone, it's a lot easier to, especially on Zoom, you can see the expression on their face, you can hear the intonation in their voice, and I think you can understand what they're saying better. So we've started offering that. And one of the chaps recently, not only did he really value that as part of the service, but what it allowed him to ask was, what do I do well? Because the critique had pointed out quite a lot of things that he needed to improve, things that he could tweak, things that he could consider changing that he may or may not want to change in the end, because a lot of it is subjective. But what he asked was, what do I do well? And Ed, who'd done the critique for him, gave him a load of stuff that he was doing well. And since then, we've started more actively putting that into the report. You do this really well because it encourages people to continue and carry on. And with creativity, that's really important. If you feel like you can't do something, you you can't do it. You've got to feel like you can do it, and then you can apply yourself and give it your best shot. So while you've got to be honest, it's important to point out the good things. Be honest without being unkind. I think that's the best way to look at it. The last thing you want to do when you provide a critique is put someone off writing. That's not why they've come to you. They've taken a step. They've taken a leap of faith. They want to improve, otherwise they wouldn't be doing it. And you've got to respect that and be kind to them.
And encourage that risk taking. That's not an easy thing to do
No,
because you're putting yourself out there.
absolutely. I did some work for a charity a while back, and it was they were trying to help people who had experienced homelessness or were experiencing it via creative writing. And that was a huge learning curve, and it was such a good thing to do. Because these, when I started out, my whole focus was just on getting published. But as I've been in the creative writing industry for more years, I suppose I've picked up on the fact that a lot of people don't do it to get published. They do it for mental health. And that's what these people were doing it for. They were getting stuff out of their system and getting it onto paper. And that was really rewarding to do. And I actually published some of that too. And worked with one chap who he used to supplement his diet by foraging. So there's a big park in Bristol, which is the city that I lived in at the time. Um, and he used to go out there and look for wild garlic and mushrooms and stuff like that to eat. And he wrote about that, just stuff he wouldn't think about unless you were in that position where you had to go find food. It was really interesting. And there's a charity in Bristol called Caring in Bristol, and they provide a book called The Survival Handbook. And it's for people who they haven't got a home. And it just gives them lots of useful information about the city, like where the doctors are, where the public toilets are, and things like that. Stuff you might need to know if you didn't have a home. And as part of that, they wanted an article in there written by someone who, you know, their audience could relate to because they were experiencing homelessness themselves to kind of be part of that book, which I thought was a lovely idea. And I mentored the guy that wrote the article for the book. And that was so rewarding to be part of. It was nice to be involved with these charities that help people and feel like you're helping them.
Now, when you're curating and editing these anthologies, you're working with a lot of different people, not just writers, but also readers and judges and people who are helping you to put the anthology all together. What are some of the ways that you manage creative collaborations like that?
Being necky and asking people to do stuff. When for example, I'm editing the anthology at the moment, so I will have to communicate with each of the writers to show them what I've done to their story to make sure they're happy with it. I have to liaise with all the judges who help me decide who wins. They all provide words and stories that are included in the book. I then have to, Susanna, my wife, helps me proofread. And so does Linda, who works with me through the writing services. So there's the proofreading side of it. I put the paperback together, and then there's a lady that I know in Canada called Ange, and she codes the ebook version, which is a totally different project all on its own. And one of the things she does is allow it to be accessible to anyone. So if you're visually impaired, you can still read or listen to the book in a way where it makes it accessible. And so that's a whole different project all on its own. So there's a lot to it. And one of the things I found is Zoom. Uh, one of the good things to come out of COVID, I suppose, is that we all learned how to use Zoom. And now I can deal with people all over the world. And we can phone up and have a video call and, share a screen and discuss a book.
I'd like to circle back to your humor short story competition to Hull and Back that you've now been doing for, you said, about 12 years.
Yeah, that's right.
So, how do you continue to innovate and keep the competition fresh and relevant for new generations of writers?
I think there's always people that are going to want to try their hand at humor. And one of the things I've found is that over time, the competition has grown and now it's known in America and Australia and Canada and all the English speaking countries and beyond that. And because of that, I get more entries every year. So, the first year I ran it, I got about 90. And the last time when it just closed this year, I got 662. So it's grown over time. And because I get more voices from around the world, I guess that's opened it up to a wider audience over time. And because of that, I get a more diverse mix of storytellers and voices, which is nicer for people reading the book as well. So the first year I ran it, the vast majority of the entrants were based in the UK. And now it's, while the majority still might be the UK, the proportions are totally different. I get a lot of entries from the US, I get a lot from Australia, and then this year a lot from Canada. And maybe that was because the chap that won it last time in 2023 was Canadian. I I don't actually know. It could be that someone shared it in a writing group in Canada and therefore it got more well known that way. I don't really know. But I suppose that's how it stays relevant. It's got wider reach now, and therefore you're getting voices from all around the world. And that makes it more attractive, I think. So I get more entries and people buy more copies of the book as well. And what I find is the people that buy the book are usually the people that are intending to enter the competition. They're doing their research, seeing what won last time, so they've got a better chance of penning a successful story for it the next time round. And it has evolved. It's a lot of work. When I first started out, it was quite manageable, and I've had to go. I run it biennially now, so every other year, just because of the amount of work involved. It, you know, reading 662 stories it takes ages. It's an enjoyable job, but you've got to make it manageable in the turnaround times to get the book out by the end of October because the book comes out on Halloween. Halloween.
Well, we're going to take one final break. Up next, Chris will share his reflections on legacy and vision. And then we'll close out with some advice and a little bit of fun. Great leadership starts with great culture. At the Forward Project, we help organizations transform their workplace culture and develop leaders who inspire, engage, and drive meaningful change. Ready to take your team to the next level? Visit www.theforwardproject.co to learn more. Welcome back to Expressions of Leadership. I'm Michele Kawamoto Perry, and I'm here with Chris Fielden, author, musician, and creator of international writing competitions. Let's wrap up this very fascinating conversation. Chris, what's your vision for the future? Any exciting projects or directions that you're pursuing?
Well, I'd like to get more time together so I could actually do a bit more fiction writing. One of the things I find through doing editing and all the subscription stuff is that I do quite a lot of writing for subscribers, advice pieces and non-fiction, but I'm not finding a lot of time to actually indulge in my fiction. So one of the things about the subscription model and making more money is that it frees up a bit of time, so I've got some time to write more because, I enjoy it. So I suppose a short-term goal is to be able to ditch the money-making other job part-time that I do to kind of help make ends meet to do that. And then I've got, I wrote a short story collection called Alternative Afterlives, and I've had this idea for ages about writing a sequel called Sinister Sequels, and there are 14 short stories in the Alternative Afterlives, and I want to write a sequel for each one. So the stories in the second book will all be following on from the first story. It might be loose, it might have one character in it that goes on to be in another story, or it might continue from where that story left off. And I've done some of that, but that book was released in 2019, which was 6 years ago, and I still haven't finished the sequel. And if you're gonna write a series of books, you need to pump them out a little bit quicker than I'm doing at the moment. So I'd like to be able to free up the time to do that around all the other stuff that I do. I suppose that's the goal.
And what's the legacy that you hope to leave behind through your leadership and creative work?
I don't know. It's just to have been someone that helped other writers achieve or, get their first step on the ladder to go on to do better things. That's what my site does. It's for people starting out, and it gives them that first step up. And if that first step allows them to then hit the other steps that they wouldn't have otherwise reached, I think that's what it's all about. Giving them a bit of help.
Well, now it's time for our wisdom and a whimsy segment of the show where we get to ask our guest one advice question and one fun question. Starting with the advice question, if life came with a handbook, what's a chapter that you'd want everyone to read?
How to be kind. To be thoughtful, be kind, and just we've come full circle here. Treat people how you'd want to be treated. I think you can learn so much from that. And listen as much as you speak.
Listen even more than you speak.
Yeah, for sure.
And now for the fun question. What song would be the anthem of your life and why?
Dirty deeds done dirt cheap. I'm joking. Although it is a great song. Although it's a great song. Probably Let There Be Rock. It's all about having fun. And in fact, these are all AC/DC songs. There's another one called It's a Long Way to the Top if you want to rock and roll. And I think that they wrote that early doors, talking about how difficult it is and how much work you have to put in to be a rock star. And it's about facing adversity and pushing through. And I think you can learn an awful lot from that song. And that's what I do. You know, most sane people might have given up what I do a long time ago, but I still play in bands, I still go and tour, I still write books, and I love it. So I think you've got to follow your dreams. That's what it's about. And never give up.
Well, finally, for our listeners who want to connect with you or get involved with your courses or competitions, what's the best way for them to do that?
Just have a look at the website. It's christopherfielden.com. There's a contact page on there, and you can find out the best way to get in touch with me. The email is my favorite.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for sharing your leadership journey from rhythms on the drums to nurturing stories on the page. It's been a genuine pleasure having you on Expressions of Leadership. And I'm sure that our listeners will carry many of your lessons with them in their own leadership paths.
Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
And to our listeners, remember, leadership isn't about the spotlight. It's about the impact that you make, the support that you give, and the stories that you help tell. Whatever your role or stage, you have a unique expression of leadership to share with the world. Thank you for spending time with us, and until next time, keep leading with creativity, heart, and courage. If you haven't done so already, make sure to click on that follow button so you don't miss out on future episodes. Have a guest you'd like us to interview? Questions, ideas, or just want to say hello? You can reach us at letstalk@expressionsofleadership.com or connect with us on Instagram or YouTube. We'd love to hear from you. And as always, thanks to our amazing team behind the scenes for making this podcast possible, including our sound engineer, Graham Palmer, and my chief encourager and advisor, Jeremiah Higgins.